My grandparents got engaged without ever seeing each other in person. My parents got engaged within an hour of meeting each other. And here I was, age 26, going through the same arranged marriage process, but taking my own sweet time. Back in January 2021, I was flying to India to meet this girl who I'd been talking to for 6 months, but had never met. Let's call her T. And if this meeting went well with her, she and I would be telling our children stories of a quick engagement too. And you would think that if I was flying 8,000 miles in the middle of a pandemic to meet someone I'd never met before, I would be head over heels in love with them. But all my Zoom calls with T had felt like bad dates where I keep talking and she only gives me one-word replies. After these calls, my parents would ask me, how did it go? And I would complain, she doesn't talk. And my dad would say, what do you mean she doesn't talk? Your mom didn't talk before we got married. Look at her now. Compatibility was not a word in my parents' vocabulary. A fair question to ask is, if we didn't click, why keep going? I am the eldest child in my generation. I'm the obedient one, the people pleaser. I find it hard to say no to anyone. And the arranged marriage process is quite intense. It's not just you and your potential partner involved, it's also your parents. And both our parents, they're like recruiters. They do the resume screen, the phone screen, run extensive background checks, and only when they feel satisfied do we step in and start talking as the final round of the interview. And all this can take months. So on paper, T was the perfect match for me. Both of us practiced the same religion, we'd both studied computer science, even our moms were from the same town. And the background checks had come back stellar. So even though I could tell that T and I weren't gelling, I kept giving her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's shy, maybe doesn't do well over Zoom. And I kept playing along against my instincts, trusting the process, and decided that I'll only make a decision after I meet her in person. So this meeting was going to take place at this fancy 5-star hotel in Delhi. And this is the same hotel where 2 of my uncles had gotten engaged in the past. So everyone around me, my entire family, was looking at this hotel as a lucky charm. So when I met T and her family at the hotel the next day, I saw T and I noticed that she was taller than I'd expected. Classic pandemic Zoom height problem. She was also prettier in person than she'd looked on FaceTime, and for a second I thought, maybe the hotel is a lucky charm. After meeting each other as families, we decided to speak privately and went to the Chinese restaurant at the hotel. I asked her if she wanted to get some food and handed her the menu. See, I am very food motivated. That's like my way of connecting with people. So when she told me that she wasn't hungry, part of me died right there. I have to admit, I was watching T's every action, every move, like something out of a Nat Geo documentary. I put the napkin on my lap, she didn't. I used chopsticks for the appetizer, she used a fork. A lot of the conversation that followed was a lot of small talk. Every so often, I would try to ask her a question that I thought would be more revealing to the both of us. Like, I asked her, what's something that gets you really excited, something you're passionate about? And she said, I get really excited about the latest iPhone. I don't know what she was thinking and why she kept playing along, but to me, she just wasn't someone very interesting. After 4 hours of painful small talk, I dropped her off at her hotel, drove back home to what was essentially a post-match press conference. My grandfather, grandmother, uncle, aunt, mom, dad, and brother all gathered in one room, sitting in a circle, waiting to ask me how the night went. And the entire drive home, I kept thinking how I was going to explain this evening. My uncle started the line of questioning, how did it go? In a very lukewarm way, I said, it was okay, she was pretty, her family was nice, but when we started talking, we just didn't click. So my dad chimed in and said, so what did you talk about for 4 hours? And I said, I was trying to be absolutely certain about my decision. And my dad asked, so what is your decision? And this is when I froze. See, throughout this entire process, it had never felt like it was solely my decision. It felt like a family decision. And the obedient child in me didn't want to disappoint my family after so much time through the process, but I didn't know how to say no. My dad must have recognized this about me when I was growing up because he used to always tell me, learn how to say no when you don't want to say yes. And I used to tell him, Dad, that's easier said than done. How can I be selfish and say no to someone when someone expects something of me? But in this moment, I felt selfish. I was going to say no to the one person who most expected me to say yes, my dad. Seeing the indecision on my face, my grandfather intervened and he said, left up to you, would you want to move forward with this person? And unable to meet anyone's eyes in the room, I just shook my head and said, no. My grandfather said, well, it's settled then. If you're not going to be happy, we don't have to move forward with this. My head cocked up in shock. That was it? That felt too easy. Had I been creating this prison of expectations in my head this entire time when I had the agency to say no? My dad was dejected. I could see the disappointment in his face, and for a while I couldn't meet his eyes. After 2 years of going through this process, and many women and their families later, this would mean going back to square one. My dad really had high hopes with this one. It took some time, but we went back to the drawing board together. The next morning, my dad texted T's dad that we wouldn't be moving forward with the process. It's the first time I saw my parents break up with someone over text. But there were a few things I learned that day. My family is more supportive of me and my happiness than I was giving them credit for. And it was important for me to say no that day when I didn't want to say yes, because if I hadn't said no, I don't think I would have had the strength to say yes to my wife only 1 month later. Thank you.